Welcome, everyone, to episode 219 of Just Joshing. I am your host, Joshua Penteloresco. I write stuff in podcast too. Today, my guest is Conor McCreery. Conor is a comic book creator, writer extraordinaire, most notably known for Kill Shakespeare, but he's got a lot of other cool things coming up, and we talk a little bit about that in this episode. And this is kind of like a penultimate episode. This is the last of what I would call my regular episodes for the year. And I'm going to take the opportunity when this episode comes to an end, talk about what's coming up next for me, and kind of just some things I've been thinking about in the last little bit. But honestly, it's been kind of cool. I'm kind of wrapping down my work schedule at the day job. I've been having a lot of fun with what I've been calling a day job. It's been a kind of a hoot to refer to it this way. All in all, though, it's been a good time. It's been nice just to kind of go through this cycle. Knowing it's going to be my last cycle like this. It's kind of, well, I can't say for sure I won't work full time like this again, but I'm taking some chances next year, and I'm going to talk about this more a little bit afterwards, but I'm ready to bet on me. I'm really, really ready to bet on me, and so I'm kind of enjoying this run as it is, because it's this is the last run I feel it's going to be quite like this. And I can't wait. I really, really can. Let's get to the conversation. We'll talk more afterwards, all right? All right.
Okay. So, the best part about this was when I did not put myself down for any Aurora nomination. I literally woke up in June. And I'm like, Dear Aurora Award finalists. I was like, wait, what? And then I'm like, this is a joke, right? And then I look, nope, it's not a joke. And it was like, and if you go back into my podcast archive, you can actually find the episode where you find the gentleman who actually put my name in there. So he's one of the guests on there. It's actually not that far down, but it's one of those situations, man, where it just worked out. I got nominated and I won, and I was there when I won, which was, like I said, you don't believe it when you hear it. It's like, hey, you win. Cool. Okay, now what do I say?
Incredible, right? I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have been nominated a couple times for awards in my career, but I've never won anything. So I can only imagine like how cool it is to not just, to get nominated out of nowhere is already an honor, because you're like, whoa, somebody else thinks so much of me that they put my name forward. And then to get to be there, to have your name called out that's got to be one of the coolest moments of your career.
It's a very cool high. It's a very cool high, and it's like, so J.M. Landels, who does a really cool magazine, because I mentioned it like this, it's my first Rory. She goes, I love the fact that you're already thinking that you're gonna win more, and yeah. Well, it's like I said, it's just one of those. It's all things. These things are possible, right? And once you kind of recognize, like, yeah, you've been doing this a long time. Like, just to give you an idea, I've done over 200 episodes. So, I mean, I've been doing this for a while. I never expected the ride I've had doing this at all. But, I mean, it's been a really, really fun ride. I mean, I've met some amazing people, yourself included. Although, so I kind of like, I'm like, I won. I must have done something right, and I better just keep doing what I'm doing. So, that's that. So yeah, it's been nuts since, and in good ways. It's almost, it's kind of like, I guess you would probably understand this a little bit too, because Kill Shakespeare's gotten you to a certain level of success when people start recognizing you for what you're doing, and you just minding your own business one day. Suddenly you wake up and people know who the hell you are. You're like, this is so cool. I'm kind of overwhelmed a little bit probably when this happens. I can imagine that's probably what happened to you.
Yeah, I mean, it is weird. Yeah, it's definitely kind of weird. I mean, for me, I find it, the part that seems odd now is, because I mean, Anthony and I have been doing Kill Shakespeare since, 2009, really, 2010. And so in that time, we've carved out our little space in the world. But what I find interesting is, we go to a lot of shows, so, we've had lots of people, and I feel like we have most of our interactions. It feels like, oh, we meet people at shows, they pick up the book, they come back and see us at that show a year or 2 years later, and, the relationship continues to build. But every once in a while, you have people who, like, walk by your table and they stop and they like grab a friend and they're like, oh, you have to read this. And it's this kind of, it is weird to sometimes think that there are people out there that you haven't personally sold the book to that are sitting there going, oh yeah, I saw the title, I made a choice to read it, I really, really liked it, and now I'm seeing it live, and I'm telling this friend of mine, oh man, like, this is this memory kick, you gotta get this series. So it's really nice. I mean, I still don't quite, I guess the Canadian part of me feels super self-conscious and odd about it. But yeah, it's flattering, of course. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to write stories or tell stories or talk about stories because you care about them and you hope somebody will also care about them. But yeah, and again, like for I actually just found the podcast, I think, or the post where you talk about, all of a sudden people are telling you about your podcast and stopping you and telling you how much they like it. And it is weird. Like I feel like once there is that little bit of recognition, it almost gives everybody permission to be like, oh, I like that thing, and it's been given some sort of external approval, and so now I get to talk about it more. And I think that's one of the coolest things about fan culture is it can, that external approval can come from a million different places, and it doesn't have to be an award, although that's great. It can be a fellow podcaster talking about listening to yours, or a blogger writing about how they picked up Kill Shakespeare in a library, and that gives I like how that gives people permission to really lean into their passions, which is great, right? I mean, I feel like everybody's sometimes a bit nervous when they like something that maybe is not super popular as, for, oh man, is this actually good or do I have bad taste? I don't know. At least that's something that I sometimes sit around being like, man, I'm in love with this thing. But that's that's probably the weird, insecure creator brain of mine.
Well, me, I don't worry about it. I have long made peace with the fact that I'm uncool. I'm good with it, and so I just go with the fact that it's like, okay, I like it, and really that's all I really care about. I enjoy it. I mean, for me with comics, that's especially a thing. It's actually really. So for me, like from a comic book point of view, it's hilarious to me that a couple of the people at the comic shop I go to actually go, you have really good taste in books. And I'm like, well, thank you. I think. I just, and I just read what I like to read, and, it's not necessarily because it's a popular thing, although sometimes it is a popular thing, but it's just, I can read a book and go, I really like it, I'm really in. And then, then suddenly sometimes you're like, hey, everybody else likes it. And then every once in a while you get a book, you're like, I'm the only one that likes it. I'm okay, though. I can live with that. And but I mean, it's really, I think the absolute weirdest part about anything that is successful is there's no magic way to make something successful. It's just, one day, I mean, this is like, for my case, like, it's like one day you wake up and just somehow everybody knows your name. It's not, I know it sounds like a really bad Cheers reference, but I mean, it's true. You just go in and you're just doing what you've always done, and then one day you wake up and like, everybody recognizes, oh man, you're doing this again. Wait, again? Who are you people? What are you doing on my yard? What the hell happened? And you're still kind of clueless about that. I don't know. Maybe I feel like maybe you have more experience. I think being being well known for what you do than I do. So maybe that's not what happened with you, but that's kind of how I feel.
Well, and I think also, I mean, excuse me. I mean, name recognition and money helps, right? At the end of the day, like, there's no way to make something popular, but if you've got enough money behind you and people know your name, it certainly gives you a leg up. But yeah, I think for most of us, I think you kind of get caught in this weird space between being, oh man, it's so cool that people know who I am, and also then kind of looking around and being like, but at the end of the day, I'm not as well known as dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens other writers in the comics world. And I guess, like you said about like liking that book and being the only person who likes it and being like, yeah, like, who cares, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you should like what you like because you like it, and you should do what you do because you like it. And all the other stuff is a nice bonus, and I think it is. It's very satisfying. It's nice for someone to come up and say, I like what you do, right? It's super nice for that. But I think at the same token, you have to be able to do whatever you're doing, no matter what it is, whether it's in the creative industry or anything else, and just do it because you're like, I get satisfaction out of doing this, and I feel like I'm doing it right, or I'm doing it as best as I can right now, or I'm learning, and I know that as I learn, the next moment gets better. And I feel like at the end of the day, you have to be able to take some satisfaction in that. Like the last few weeks were actually pretty tough. I mean, I got sick a little bit. This interview had been delayed a bit, but even before that, I was in a bit of a funk in terms of just actually creating. I had a whole bunch of projects that were all sort of kind of urgent in that I wanted them all done, but none of them had sort of firm deadlines. And so I was in this weird space where I kind of caught myself not really knowing what I should be doing every morning and not organizing myself and just forcing myself to do something. And so a few weeks went by where I wasn't very creative. And then a project came in for a Canadian publisher, and they needed me to fill in on an issue of something. And they had a deadline. And, boom, like, I wrote that issue and, I beat it out over a period of time, but I wrote it in, 2 days. And then that, that kind of jump starts everything else. So it's an interesting world being in when you're making something, because, I think one of the great things about doing a podcast per se is, you have a deadline. You've got to have something out, because you promised yourself you'll do that. And I do a little bit of writing, actually, because I'm a huge basketball fan. I do a little bit of writing for a site called Raptors HQ here in Toronto, and that requires me to turn in, I've got to turn in something every week. And I realized how much I missed that. I mean, I started as a journalist where I had multiple deadlines every day. And these past couple of months where I've been really, honestly, perhaps the least creative I've been in a long time, just really reminded me of the value of having that kind of deadline, but also the intrinsic value of just doing the work, and how just doing the work is in and of itself a reward, because it reminds you that you can do this thing. And there's something. It's hard to train yourself to just finish a piece and send it off to the world and not judge it and be like, yeah, that's the editor is going to be there to help me. I don't have to do that job first. I can work hard in this, finish it off, and just let myself be proud that I finished it. And I don't have to stress about what the next draft needs to be right now. And I feel like that's a hard place to get, at least for me. And you might be in a totally, maybe for you with the regular podcast schedule, that it's just like, yeah, I do it, I get it out there, and I don't spend any time worrying about how good it is or isn't. But that's a thing that I always struggle with myself.
Well, I have what I call 4 rules. It's really simple 4 rules. I have a 4 rule process. Ready? Rule 1, show up. Rule 2, do your shit. Rule 3, don't quit. And rule 4, the rest is rain. I keep it really simple like that, because I recognize the fact that the biggest challenge in any kind of creative life, I think it doesn't matter what it is you always have to make yourself accountable. This is why deadlines are awesome, because deadlines force accountability, right? You have to have something out there by this day at this time, or you don't get paid, number 1. Number 2, you're not out there, you're not keeping yourself relevant in some form or fashion, right? And 3, it's just, honestly, again, it's an understated part of the creative life. You have to have a lot of discipline to do it. Yeah, I mean, that's the grind of it. It's you day in and day out. You have to do something, produce something. I didn't get to, when I first started the podcast, it was a once a week thing. Now it's a twice a week thing. I've never had an issue getting interviews. Now, the caliber of guests I've been getting has gotten, they've become more well known over time, by and large. But
I appreciate you for slumming this on this one, then.
Yes, that's yeah. No, actually, dude, you're pretty well known. You're pretty well known for what you do. I mean, I've had Terry Moore on the show, so I mean, I think he's got you beat. But besides that, I think you're in a pretty good class all by yourself.
I actually was on a panel with Terry Moore, and it was totally humbling, because Terry, Strangers in Paradise, was one of those comic books that that brought me back to comics, right? That made me go like, oh my gosh, like comics are telling these like emotionally complex stories, and that's what I love to read. Yeah. I'm curious because you're also a writer. Do you find it different between your podcast discipline and your writing discipline?
Again, I go by the basic 4 rules, right? And I apply them to everything I do. Now, it just so happens, like right now, with the way the podcast has kind of gone this year, it's been more my focus, right? Because I've been nominated, I've had opportunities come my way, and so I've been forced to be more consistent with the podcast than with my other creative works. But it's essentially it's the same discipline muscles, if that makes sense. It's just, okay, I have to write X amount of pages today, or I have an assignment in my head. Like I have a small mini book I want out by January 12th. So that's my next major, like that's my immediate project that has to come out. I have another project that's in an editor's hands right now, right? I have the aforementioned assignment coming up soon with that I mentioned off the air. Like I'm having now other writing opportunities and other deadlines coming up now, so I'm more worried about that now. But I mean, it's the same basic concept. Like I have to go get, like with the podcast, I must find interviews. Here we go. Hey Connor, you want to do this? Maybe we'll figure this out. And then that's part of my day. Another part of my day is having these conversations with you and everybody else I get the opportunity to do it with. And then it's like, okay, 2 days a week I have to put an episode together, right? And so I've gotten that down to a science with the podcast and also writing. Okay, little booklet, it's written. I've handed it off. Okay, now it's my turn to work on it, modify it, get ready for the next step, whatever that is. While that's done, I have another book in the editor's hands. I have a novel I'm working on too. That's kind of like, that's something I'm going to be working on quite a bit today, is that novel, because I haven't had a lot of time to work on it the last little bit. And that's just part of the creative struggle. Like I find that it's just giving yourself the time, finding the time to do everything, it seems right now, is my challenge specifically. But I set myself, even if they're not always like real set in stone deadlines, I always set myself a deadline to do something. Like, okay, I'm going to do something today. Maybe I only...
And that's smart, right? Because I feel like that's sometimes... I feel like people... this is kind of interestingly enough turned into a podcast about, I guess, the creative process. But,
yeah.
Like I do a lot of... I try to lead a fair amount of workshops where I talk about writing. And one of the things I really try to stress is the idea of both like having these deadlines, but also having milestones. And, I feel like people are often afraid to set deadlines because it's like, what if I miss it? And it's like, you know what? That's not ideal. You want to train yourself out of missing your deadlines. But if you missed your deadline, you're almost guaranteed to be farther ahead in the project than you would have been if you had no deadline.
Yeah, you need...
Right? Because, even if what happens to you is the classic human nature, oh man, I said I was going to have this book done on Friday, and you punt on the last 30 pages on Monday, Tuesday, and you rush through Wednesday, Thursday, and you're like, oh man, I wrote them, but they're not really done. Like, I have to still edit this. That's fine. Even if you're doing that last minute, like, get as much done as you can, it still got done. And you gave yourself that last minute panic crunch where you did what you needed to do to make progress in the project. And the other thing, and I think you want to give yourself milestones. I think you want to celebrate yourself, when that first draft is done. It's as easy as like, oh, I'm going to buy myself that video game I've been wanting to play, or giving yourself permission for food, whatever it is. I think you want yourself a pat on the back as well, because it is hard. If lots and lots and lots of people want to create, and a much smaller section of that actually do it on a consistent basis, and it's hard. So if you accomplish it, you got to give yourself some pat on the back. Like winning an Aurora.
Yeah. I think honestly of the 4 rules I mentioned, the hardest one's rule 1. Showing up. I mean, I've learned this like in just even real life stuff in general. I I think a lot of people do themselves in creatively and in other things in life just because they fail to do that. And like I said, I'm recognizing as I get older, it's like, okay, any success I've ever accomplished, good, bad, or indifferent, has been largely because I've just shown up and done the work, and I have been smart enough to get the hell out of my own way, right? And this is where I think the good enough, I've talked about this in the past in other podcasts. I mean, perfection is the enemy of creativity. I mean, it's good to have this idea of what this idea in your head is supposed to be. But, I mean, the reality sometimes is, it's not going to work out as you imagine it. And that's not always a bad thing. It's actually a great thing sometimes. But it's the fact is, like, the only time perfection is useful to a creative person is at the beginning, when you have this idea in your head you're trying to convey. But once you're actually in the work of what you're doing, whatever that is, you have to be wise enough to just, dismiss that notion when you're doing the work. And that doesn't mean like your first draft's going to be great. Usually your first draft is shit. But you'll have an idea when you're done the first draft, or or an interview or something like that. It doesn't really matter what the creative process, what the creative medium is. You'll have an idea of what the project is. And it may not be what you imagine it to be, but sometimes it's better. Like, a lot better than you ever could have imagined, than you imagine it to be. Sometimes it's not. But you have to make it, you have to give yourself permission to just do it. And not, again, have perfection in your head until you start working. And then once you start working...
And I kind of feel like that, rewriting and editing is where you make your pilgrimage towards perfection, right?
Yeah.
You're ultimately you're not going to get there in a tangible sense of the world, like with any pilgrimage, right? It's more of a spiritual journey. And yeah, the editing part, that like you said, your first draft is going to not be as good as your final draft, right? Or at least it's not, and that's okay. And I feel like that's to me, and this is on the hell of how slow I am sometimes to start projects, is the part I enjoy the most is the editing, right? Is going in there and playing with words and looking at scenes and being like, this is okay, but it's not as good as it could be, and being and having the feeling in my brain of being like, oh man, I've improved as a storyteller because I can look at my own stuff and be like, what is this scene about? This is not about anything. It would be better if it was about this. It would be better if this character was more tied into this character. I mean, I think we all do that to one degree or another while watching other mediums or reading other mediums, or stories, sorry, not mediums. And it's easier to kind of do it from a I mean, pick any movie you love, and everybody's going to sit there and have a bunch of reasons why they could have done it differently. And honestly, a bunch of those reasons are pretty good. It's not like people pull things apart and have horrible ideas all the time. A lot of times people have very good ideas, but that's the easy thing, is taking somebody else's completed work and getting the benefit of watching the whole thing and then getting to say, oh, it would be better if. But when you can do that to your own work, I think that's when you start to feel, for me, that's when I start to feel like, okay, I actually can do this. I'm starting to recognize how to become a better storyteller in my own sandbox, and that's valuable. And yeah, I think you just have to give yourself, like you said, give yourself permission to write the first draft, right? The first draft, to do the first recording of your song or whatever else it is. I mean, and again, I feel like people have heard this before, but it's good to hear it again. It's good to be re-inspired and to be like, all you can do is start the work. That's literally all you can do as a creator. All you can do is start the work. And then all you can do after that is continue the work. And then the final, last, all you can do thing is give yourself permission to tie off that work, no matter what, and put it out in the world. Because of course that's just as valuable at the end of the day. Is, if I was still writing, I think we did 17 drafts of the first issue of Kill Shakespeare. And I think all 17 drafts were needed. We probably could have done a couple more in retrospect. But at a certain point, we had to be like, okay, this is the deadline. We have to finish tinkering. Because if we don't, it's never out there. And whatever level of notoriety I have for Kill Shakespeare doesn't exist if you don't put out the work. So, yeah, and it's okay. Like, I think that's the exciting thing. I think the other thing that people miss out on is the excitement of actually the first time you sell or give your work to somebody else, and they're excited to have it. And that's a great moment. I hope everybody gets that in some form in their life, of no matter what it is, whether you're a project manager or a novelist, that having that moment where you've handed something you've created to someone else and they're like, this is good. So
yeah, it's a bit of a buzz, like whenever, especially when you fulfill a deadline and you're going to be on some level rewarded for it. That is a great high. It is actually one of the best things ever, because it means that someone's appreciating your work, and that's big.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is. It's fun. It's a great moment, and it lets you feel good about yourself. And at the end of the day, that's, what else do you want, right? You do this because you want to entertain, you want people to like it, and there's a bit of an ego boost and all that. Yeah, so we have spent about 30 odd minutes talking about the creative process. I wasn't sure if there's anything else you wanted to talk about. I'm totally happy to keep going down this road, but I wasn't sure if there was anything else.
I don't know if did you listen to any of my podcasts?
I haven't for a while. I listened to a couple after, because we did one a while ago. So I'm coming into this a little blind.
Okay, so I just go wherever. Like, just to give you an idea, like, I have an episode coming up with a metal band, and we literally talked about Fred the Stone Fly, because there was literally a stone fly in the studio. So I literally I don't really have a master plan. I just literally come in, we just start talking, and one thing leads to another, and leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and I just go with it. This started with the creative process, so I'm like, okay, we can go with that. I'm really, really cool with this, and go from there and see what happens. But I'm open to talk about anything you want to, Mr. Connor.
You lead the way. This is your.
Absolutely. But I'm just giving you the whole thing for me is, I figured out the equation to a sale a long time ago. Would you like to hear my equation to a sale? It is, who are you, what do you offer, and why should I care? And it's very journalistic. I figure you'd appreciate that. So I kind of go with the podcast. It's like, we'll talk about whatever matters to you, because it'll show something about who you are. Like, for example, I learned something just talking to you for the last 20 minutes, that you enjoy being a teacher.
Oh, sorry, pardon? Actually, it just got actually quiet there in that one moment.
I said you enjoy being a teacher.
Yeah, I do. I've always enjoyed, doing workshops. I've always enjoyed that. Part of it, I think, is the performative aspect of it. I'm one of those people who doesn't mind being the center of attention, especially when there's, a purpose to it. Just kind of going to a party or something, I'm not as comfortable. But yeah, if I'm walking in that room and I'm supposed to have some sort of level of expertise, and I'm going to, give you something that will help you, I do. I enjoy that. It's fun. I think I'm good at it. People tend to really enjoy coming to writing workshops that I lead. I think I have some useful things to say, if only from a low level of hey, I want to leave you here feeling inspired with a couple of tangible tools to work with. And yeah, I feel like that it's nice. It's nice to give something back to other people. And it's a very different interaction. Behind the table is always, it's good, it's fun, but it's a little stilted, right? It's sort of like, hey, have you read Kill Shakespeare? Are you a fan of Adventure Time? Do you like Holmes versus Houdini? Hey, check out this new book I've got. It's like it's Goonies, but with ghosts. And that's all, it's good, but it's predicated on this sort of, I have something I want you to purchase from me. Where with the teaching, I think I give you value when you get a book, but this is me just being like, hey, I'm just giving you value, right? You chose to be here because you think there's something I have for you, and yeah, I like that. I really do.
I get that. I get it. So the probably thing you least hate about conventions is probably selling your work. It's probably the least favorite, because that's always, there's always that feeling of, I have to pitch something, which sucks, because I would just rather talk about, something that's really good. Like, for example, you talk about Terry Moore. I'd love to talk about Terry Moore, right? I'd rather do that than sell my book. I imagine it's probably about the same with you.
getting a chance to talk with. He's
He's awesome.
Nice, right? Like, he's just a really, really nice human being. Which actually reminds me, I'm like, oh, I should follow up with him because I got a book from him and we did a book swap. And so, it's high time for me to follow up and do the scary thing of like, hey, you're an idol of mine. I'm just curious what you thought of what I gave you if you had a chance to read it, kind of thing.
So you still get shy meeting people too.
Oh, of course. Of course.
That's been beaten out of me a little bit just based on what I'm doing. Now I'm not afraid to approach anybody. And I'm probably going to get in trouble for that someday. But that I'm really okay with that. So if you ever hear me in the paper, it was just me trying to say hi. I swear. Because, well, the other thing too, and this is a very important thing, is you got nothing to lose by asking. I've learned this lesson too, is like, I already kind of have a no if I don't ask. What happens if I ask? Because you never know what you're gonna get, and clearly, sometimes it's really freaking cool too. So yeah, I've become I've become bolder as I've done this. Like I said, I'll get in trouble for it someday probably. So, but it is what it is. But where I was going with this is, so it sounds to me like, because you've been doing this for a long time. And you have a solid career doing what you're doing. So, do you still kind of feel like an awe that you're like with certain people all the time? Like you're grouped with, you could talk about Jim Zub, for example. Awesome creative dude, right? But you're in the same field and you've done well in your own area. Does that still kind of humble you a little bit?
I think it makes a difference too in terms of like who you kind of came up with, like with Dub. When he was starting, like when we were starting off, he was starting off. And I look at like the level of success he's had, and he's a real testament to someone who just generates ideas, shows up every day. Like I cannot hold a candle to his work ethic. And his success is a direct testament to that work ethic, right? Talent notwithstanding, of which he has a ton. He just works so damn hard. And I think but I kind of came up with him. So when I see Jim, even though Jim is like, he's high on the mountain right now, right?
Oh yeah.
It's not intimidating for me to see Jim because I'm like, oh yeah, I know Jim. Jeff Lemire is somebody who I met a couple of times, but I've never really he was already at a certain level in his career when I first met him. And so even though you can make an argument that right now Jim Zub is right around the place that Jeff Lemire is in some ways, Jim, I'm always comfortable saying hi to. Jeff still does make me a little bit nervous. It's also personality. Jim is such an outgoing guy. I find it impossible that anybody could be intimidated to talk to him because he really works so hard to not carry that on. Like Anthony, who I work with Kill Shakespeare, who's just doing the Marvel book, Luke Cage. He's another guy who I feel just does such a great job of making people feel at ease with him. It's a real gift he has. And then you have weird, I actually ended up meeting Howard Chaykin. I was doing a talk at the UCLA earlier this year, and Howard Chaykin was one of the people. And Howard's a heavyweight, right? Howard is a legit heavyweight. I kind of always like to think of him as the Kinks, right? You have the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, everybody puts on this hill, but you forget the Kinks were just as vital and have had an incredible career. And I feel like Chaykin sometimes gets lost a little bit, but he was I wasn't nervous of him in a weird way. I don't know why. Maybe it's his personality. We had a great time. We ended up going for a meal, and if you've never heard Howard Chaykin talk at a convention, I highly recommend go. You will probably be offended at least once or twice. You will laugh a whole bunch of times. He's going to make you think. He's going to challenge you. He is a very smart provocateur and well worth your time. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm a little less starstruck, partially because in some ways in the last couple of years, I feel like I've geared down my career a little bit in the sense that I have kind of consciously been taking on a little less work, partially for family balance. And so I think, I don't know, maybe it's a defense mechanism of oh, well, I'm not going 100% right now, so I don't feel intimidated by somebody else going 100%. But I have found in a weird way that taking a deep breath and being hey, just focus on the stories right in front of you, has made me a little more comfortable in my own skin, and maybe that's also just getting older as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to the next little while. Like, it's been great. Kill Shakespeare's great. I'm still looking forward. There's a couple of books that I've been working on scripting or beating out in the last, actually 2 or 3 months, kind of overlapping that like fallow period, which was frustrating. But like, I've got the first book of a new kids book series called Catacombers, which is this Goonies but with ghosts thing coming out next year. Today is the first day I'm officially allowed to start working on a new project, another creator-owned thing that I've got going. I've got this book that I'm doing with a really talented Toronto-based Nigerian artist by the name of Jabolo Fagbamiye about the legendary Nigerian musician activist Fela Kuti, which will be unlike anything I've done before in my career. And I'm really excited by the feedback that's been getting from publishers. So I'm hoping that as much as I really do enjoy Kill Shakespeare and I love being associated with this and I want to keep doing it, I'm looking forward to the next year or two where I'll have a few other creator-owned things that I can put forward and kind of expand my palette a little bit. I'm curious, and it's always interesting, right? Like, Kill Shakespeare got Anthony and I a lot of his based stuff, and in a way also made us like IP guys. We did Assassin's Creed, we did the Holmes versus Houdini, I did Adventure Time. Anthony came out and did this Nancy Drew Hardy Boys book, which all of a sudden kind of made him a noir guy. And then he did this Audible book that was also kind of noir, and then that got him this Luke Cage noir thing. So it's really interesting to see how people see you evolves based on stuff you've done recently. So I'm curious to see if I do a bunch of, I'm doing a couple of all ages things, am I going to become an all ages guy, which could be cool. I love writing stuff that's how I started my career, was actually creating a kids TV show that got put in development. It just never got made. Or is doing this like super kind of bio weird, very profane Fela book going to all of a sudden push me into like a different world where I can pitch other projects that are more literary fiction. I mean, who knows? That's kind of what's exciting, and that's one of the best things about comics to me, is you can kind of be all those things. At the end of the day, I guess there's just not quite enough money in the industry for people to be like, oh man, this is where you're a golden goose, so all you get to do is this one thing. I guess if you go and do something else, I mean, at the end of the day, unless you're one of the top 2 or 3 guys in the industry, and even them, even the real, whoever you tend to think of are, the top 2 or 3 men or women working in the industry right now, even they're not making so much money for their parent companies that they're working with, if they are, that those companies would feel like they'd want to get in the way and say, hey, you're just so valuable doing this, please keep doing this. That's one of the cool things about comics that I've always enjoyed.
Well, it sounds to me like you're coming to a point in your career where you're trying to expand your comfort zone. Am I accurate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some of that. I mean, I think some it's also just what pitches hit. Like, one of the big regrets of my career right now is I had a pitch about 3 years ago, like right after the 3rd book of Kill Shakespeare, I think. And it was for this thing called After the End, which is this sort of post-horror book that looks at, we cure zombieism, but by curing zombieism, it means that we have these people who we call postmortems, people who were at one point zombies who are now not quite human, but mostly human, and like, how do we reintegrate them into the society that's trying to rebuild after it was almost destroyed by a zombie apocalypse? And it's become more relevant today than it was when we first pitched it because of Donald Trump and the rise of xenophobia and the increasing othering. And I remember we pitched it and a publisher came back and was like, this is the best pitch we've read in years. And then the artist we had attached blew up, and 3 other pitches that he had out all got picked up, and we happened to be the 4th pitch that he attached himself to, and was like, I'm really sorry, but I mean, I can't do this because I said yes to these other people first. And so, in the 6 months it took us to find another artist that we thought was right, everything changes, and all of a sudden the project that was the best pitch they'd seen, they're now like, well, we have a question about this and we have a question about that. And so, it's something I've retooled, but I look back and I'm like, oh man, like if that had happened, where would I be now, And a lot of it is just opportunity. It's when things break for you. It's when, part of it is how hard you're able to push. Part of it is how well you've done at making contacts, and part of it is just kind of luck, right? I look at that that book had come out, we'd be hopefully on book 3 or 4 now, and my career might be in a completely different place. But that also means that I probably wouldn't be doing this Catacombers book, which I've really loved writing, and would be really sad. It was an idea I had for a kid's movie years and years and years ago, and just held on to it until finally I was like, wait a second, this could be an OGN. Like, why don't I do this? So you never know. At the end of the day, I guess that's the other part, I guess, in any career, is you have to end up being able to think about the what ifs, but be happy with where you're at and not let the what ifs make you too upset. Because at the end of the day, that after the end, I still pitched around. It's still in my back pocket. Sooner or later, it's going to get made. Like, any project that I think is good, I never give up on. It stays in my back pocket, and it gets pitched over and over and over again. Sometimes to the same people a couple of years apart, because you never know when it's going to be right. And I just believe, the projects I really believe in, I'm like, no, this is awesome. It's going to be great. You should publish it. And I'll keep banging at that door until finally, it breaks. And so, it'll get made. It will get made. When? How? I don't know. But it will get made.
Huh. You mentioned television a couple times. Would you love to get back into television or movies or things of that nature?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Kill Shakespeare is being developed as television, so that's an opportunity there. I started in film and TV. That's where I started. I worked at a couple of production companies. I worked in journalism on television for a while. Like I said, I had that kids show that was created. I haven't really done too much with television. I've written a couple of pilots in the last little while, but it's something I would be interested in. But one of the things I've definitely learned is that, right now everybody kind of wants. I think when you have something successful as a film or television, then people are a little more interested in your own original ideas. But at this stage, it's like, well, is it existing IP, or can you show me the book or the comic or the short story it's based on? Because that gives people more comfort that it is a real thing. And so from that perspective, the smartest thing to do in terms of wanting to build stories that go into different mediums is to work where I'm successful, which is in comics. And I think also it's again, that's the great thing about comics, is you get to tell the story the way you want. And I think everybody can tell the difference between a project that gets made as a comic book because somebody really wants to make it as something else, and a story that could be told in a bunch of different mediums, but that has been passionately made as a comic book because the people making it as a comic book, that they love comics and like making comics and would make comics regardless of what other opportunities came their way. So that's kind of how I feel about that. But of course, yeah, it's, at the end of the day, I think anytime you can go into a medium that gives your story greater coverage, like Kill Shakespeare. Would I love Kill Shakespeare to be a television show? Of course. A, there's a financial benefit, duh. But B, how many more people would have the chance to encounter it and be like, oh, this is really cool. Like, I love the weird stuff these guys do with Shakespeare. I love how they clearly love Shakespeare, but are also not beholden to any of it. Like, this is cool. But yeah, of course, that would make me feel good, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious, like again, and this is just an impression I've got, and I know that might be another podcast down the road. Like, you, once upon a time, you were, I just get the impression that you were comfortable on stage. Maybe, did you do drama or anything like that in your younger days?
I had the old minor of theater when I was, in high school I definitely did some acting. University I had a minor in theater. I think, when I was youngest, that's kind of what I wanted to do most was to be an actor. And ultimately, I don't think I had the fortitude to be in that business. That's a tough business. There's so much rejection. I think a young version of me I just don't think I was tough enough, honestly. Now, maybe if I dove into it with both feet, it would have been a different thing. Who knows? But one of the things I think about often at this stage is I'm like, it'd be interesting to maybe go into like voice acting or something like that. I've always really enjoyed that, but who knows, right? I do enjoy. I enjoy communicating with people, for sure.
Yeah, the only reason I bring this up is I'm nuts. Like legitimately, if for me at this point in my life, I have the freedom to do this. Is if it seems like a fun idea, I do it. Like I don't really worry about like details. Like this just seems cool. Let's make it and see what happens. It's not quite Field of Dreams, but it's kind of like. I feel like I do when I go to a metal concert. I just kind of go like, let's just go for it. What the hell? The worst they can tell me is no. And like I said earlier, I always feel like I start with a no anyway. So if I get told no again, well, it's no different than where I was. So I just go for it. It sounds to me, man, like you're at a point with like. You've established yourself as a comic book creator. Like you've done an amazing job. You've had an amazing career. But I do get the sense in your case. I mean, you do get the television development with Kill Shakespeare. But I just get it. And again, I don't know you that well, but it seems to me like you're ready to try more things. It sounds like it, like just different things, and you kind of want to see what sticks, and not just in writing, but I think maybe even a little bit in everything. And I hope you go for it, because I think you might surprise yourself.
Oh, thank you. It's like you say, right? Stay inspired.
Exactly. Totally. Mr. Connor, I do think, though, we do have an interview. So, I should ask this before we wrap up. What's coming up to you, like, in, early winter, spring? Is there anything new coming out at that point?
Yeah, so, I guess anything. So, the newest is I have a piece in. A friend of mine put together a anthology in support of the American Civil Liberties Union, based on that's kind of going to tie into a documentary him and his wife are making. So I wrote a story that was a very thinly veiled story about Louis C.K. and the way he handled his apology for his for his harassment of women.
Yes.
So that's the newest thing that's out right now, and I'm actually sitting there going like, what the heck is the website for that? I'll have to dig that up and send it to you so you can post it in the text of the blog. So that's the newest thing that's out for me right now that you can get, and I'm really proud of it. It's one of the pieces I'm most proud of. I love doing short comic stories, and I think this is the best one I've done yet. I'm also the first book of Catacombers is going to be out. But I don't think that's coming out until, I think we're going to tie it into Halloween, since it is kind of a spooky story.
Okay.
And that's the major stuff I've got. And then I've got a couple of issues, but I don't think I can announce it yet because I haven't signed my agreement. But I'm doing some stuff for a Canadian publisher for one of their flagship characters, which hopefully people can guess around that. That I'm really excited for. I've never done any superhero stuff before, and so those issues should be out in the early spring, fall, but I apologize. I haven't signed a contract, and so I don't think even though I've done the work, I don't think I'm officially allowed to talk about it yet.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So, okay, then why don't we do it like this? Talk about, I guess, you talk about your defense book if you want, or the Civil Liberties thing, or if you want to talk about your last major release, you can do that, and how people can find you.
Yeah, so the most couple of recent things I've done is the most recent book of Kill Shakespeare was a book called Juliet, which is a story that in Kill Shakespeare, if you haven't read it, it's sort of a Game of Thrones meets Shakespeare sort of idea. And when you first meet Juliet, it's about 5 years after the end of the play, 6 years after the play, and she has evolved into becoming this leader of a rebellion. And she's probably the most popular character in the series, and a lot of our fans were like, that's so cool, but like, how did that happen? And so the fifth book, which is a flashback story called Past His Prologue, Juliet, it takes place about 8 months after the end of the play, and Juliet is alive, and she's angry, and she wants somebody to pay for what happened to Romeo, but deep in her heart, she sort of feels that she's the one who deserves to be punished. And so into this increasingly self-destructive young woman's life comes another death, but this one is a murder, and if Juliet can't figure out who's behind it, she's next.
Ooh, really cool.
So that you can go through, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, our website Kill Shakespeare to grab a copy of that. It's a great way to start the series. Actually, if you haven't read Kill Shakespeare yet, I would definitely say grab book 5 since it is a flashback. It'll be a standalone story, and if you get to the end of that and you're like, wow, this was cool, you'll love everything else Anthony and I have done. And then the other thing, I'm actually in Miami next week promoting a book I did earlier this year called the Adventure Time Regular Show, which is actually a mashup of the Adventure Time and Regular Show worlds, which was so much fun to write. It brought me right back to the beginning of my career when I was writing kids stuff. It's gonzo, it's bizarre. It is both a loving parody of and an homage to classic superhero books. And what it's about, I guess, is how fragile friendship can seem, but how strong it truly is, wrapped up in a new villain that threatens to destroy both the Adventure Time and the Regular Show worlds. And if you're a fan of either of those series, you will love it. And if you always wanted to kind of get into both those series, this is a great way to kind of just get the huge 10,000 foot view of all the craziness of both Adventure Time and Regular Show.
All right, and people can just find you at killshakespeare.com, or is there somewhere else?
Killshakespeare.com. You can find me on Twitter at Conor McCreery or at killshakespeare. I'm involved in both of those accounts. My Instagram is The Real Conor if you want to see lots of pictures of my kids. That's the best place to go for that. And then you can always find me on Facebook as well, just Conor McCreery. And we have a Kill Shakespeare Facebook page too.
Cool.
And that was my conversation with Conor McCreery. Check out Kill Shakespeare. Various volumes are available through Diamond Distribution, anywhere a comic shop's being sold, but you can also get them at Chapters, Amazon. Conor's an amazing talent. He's done some other cool stuff too, like Assassin's Creed and a few other things. Definitely check him out. Conor, it was great to have you on my show. You're welcome back anytime. Now, this has been a heck of a year for me. Actually, even today, it's been an amazing, fortuitous year. I have an Aurora with my name on it because of this podcast, and I am, like I've said the story before. I'm not going to go into too much here other than say I have validation. Like I really do. I mean, I have accomplished a lot. I've done 220 episodes. By the time the year is out, will be episode 221. I have Spider Robinson is episode 221. I mean, how freaking cool is that? At some point, you have to take a gamble on yourself. And I'm going to be doing that next year an awful lot of ways. Let's talk about the podcast first. The podcast is going to be, there's a lot of things I want to do with it. One of the things I'm going to be doing next year is there's going to be a 24-hour podcast. It's going to be at Loft 112 sometime in September for a charity, and I'm going to get as many cool people as I can on that show, and I'm just going to make that happen. I'm going to be doing more live shows. I haven't quite nailed all those down in my head, but I want to do some more live shows. I want to feature more talent. I want to do more of a stage presence with this show because it's a lot of fun. I got a really cool project with Joe Compton with this podcast coming up in July next year in San Diego. Yes, it is about what you think it is, but not quite in the way you think. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be cool. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm going to keep having amazing guests. I already got 4 really cool interviews lined up. And the big validation about that for me is literally I had a guy, a really well-known author, listen to my podcast with Jonas. He goes, "This is great." I responded on Facebook, "Glad you approved." It's like, it's one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. It's like, I mean, that is freaking cool. You want validity. I have it. I've earned it. And this podcast has definitely been a mixture of labor and love. And then, once again, thank you to everybody that's been on this show and everybody that's listened to it. But writing, it's one thing this podcast has taught me is that if I put the same effort into my writing like I've done on my podcast, who knows what doors will open. And I haven't even talked about all the doors I've opened as a result of this. But it made me think, what other doors can I open? I have 3 books coming out next year. Alice Zero, written by me, illustrated by the wonderful Mackenzie Carr. She kills it. I can't wait to show you the cover to Alice Zero. It is truly an amazing thing. I really dug it. She was a nice accident in the best possible way. I just saw some of her still life drawings. I was like, "Can you do this?" And she did, and it's like, wow, this is like, Mackenzie is amazing. So Mackenzie, Kenzie, whatever she wants to call herself, check out Mackenzie Carr on Facebook. You'll love her stuff. You really will. I have the Cloud Diver. It's gonna get. I found an editor, and I think it's going to work. I think it's really going to work. I really, really, really am happy about this. This book has been a labor of love. It's also been a big life lessons. I've made a lot of mistakes with this, and I've learned from them. But it's going to come out next year. And finally, a comic book from me called The Stick Figure Revolution. written by myself, illustrated by Gio Marco. It's something I've never done before. People know my love of Dr. Seuss. I do a homage to him in a way that only I could do it. I'm really excited to do this. And these are just 3 projects. I have other things I'd like to do. There's a lot of other things that excite me. But the point is this. You have to believe in yourself. You have to take those chances. You cannot be afraid to fail. And because honestly, I don't really have anything to get started. If I get my ass kicked, I lose some money. Big deal. Money comes and goes. And I don't mean that like literally. I mean my time, the effort, the journey. I don't want in my life to have this what I could have been. I'd rather wonder what I can be. I want to put it out there. I need to find out. I have to. So that's what I'm going to do next year. I'm going to find out in every which way possible. For those of you that have been part of this journey, thank you very much. You have my love and my gratitude. You really do. But the best is yet to come. I promise. And that will do it for this episode of Just Joshing. You can subscribe to this podcast a number of different ways. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. It's all available there. You can do it there. Podomatic as well. If you like the show, leave comments. If you hate the show, don't tell anybody. I understand. Really, I do. In all seriousness, just spreading the word out any way you can would be awesome. 1. 2. My books, The Watcher, Storm Dancer, Wandering God, are available from MirrorWorldPublishing.com. And as a result, also through Amazon.com, Kobo. Alice Zero is going to be available through Amazon and Kobo. Sometime, I'm hoping, January, February. We will have dates for that when I know that for sure. You're going to hear more about it as time goes on. But yes, The Watcher, Storm Dancer, Wandering God is available now. My YouTube channel is Joshua Penteloresco. You can look me up there, listen to some past conversations. Beyond all that, stay inspired out there. Believe in yourselves because you can do amazing things. Just get out there, man. Just go up there and say, here I am, and let the doors open. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll see you next time.
Josh.